Lessons from the Battle of Atlanta. A comprehensive analysis. The Battle of Atlanta, fought on July 22, 1864, was a pivotal engagement in the American Civil War. It was part of the larger Atlanta campaign, led by Union General William T. Sherman, aimed at capturing the city of Atlanta, Georgia, a critical Confederate supply center. The battle was a significant Union victory, contributing to the eventual re-election of President Abraham Lincoln and the ultimate defeat of the Confederacy. This article delves into the multifaceted lessons from the Battle of Atlanta, exploring its strategic, tactical, logistical, and human dimensions. While it is impossible to cover 100,000 words in a single response, this article provides an extensive overview, which can be expanded upon in subsequent sections. Strategic importance of Atlanta. Atlanta as a Confederate hub. Atlanta was a vital logistical and manufacturing center for the Confederacy. It served as a major railroad junction, connecting the Deep South with the eastern states. The city's factories produced munitions, uniforms, and other war supplies essential for the Confederate war effort. Capturing Atlanta would sever these supply lines and cripple the Confederate ability to sustain its armies in the field. Lesson: understanding and targeting the enemy's logistical and industrial base can significantly impact the outcome of a conflict. Modern military strategies often emphasize the importance of disrupting supply chains and infrastructure to weaken an adversary's capacity to wage war. Political implications. The capture of Atlanta had profound political implications. In 1864, the United States was in the midst of a presidential election. The war-weary Northern public was growing increasingly disillusioned with the prolonged conflict. A Union victory in Atlanta provided a much-needed boost to Northern morale and bolstered support for President Lincoln's re-election campaign. Lesson: military successes can have far-reaching political consequences. The interplay between military operations and political objectives is a critical consideration for leaders in both domains. In contemporary conflicts, the political ramifications of military actions are carefully weighed to ensure alignment with broader strategic goals. Leadership and command. Union leadership. William T. Sherman. General William T. Sherman's leadership during the Atlanta campaign exemplified strategic vision and operational flexibility. Sherman's ability to adapt his plans in response to changing circumstances was key to his success. He employed a combination of maneuver warfare and psychological warfare, aiming to not only defeat Confederate forces but also to demoralize the Southern population. Lesson: effective leadership requires adaptability and a clear strategic vision. Sherman's ability to adjust his tactics in response to the evolving battlefield situation underscores the importance of flexibility in leadership. Modern military leaders must be prepared to pivot their strategies in response to new information and changing conditions. Confederate leadership. John Bell Hood. Confederate General John Bell Hood, who assumed command of the Army of Tennessee just before the Battle of Atlanta, adopted an aggressive approach. Hood's decision to launch a frontal assault on Union forces at Peachtree Creek and later at Atlanta was driven by a desire to seize the initiative. However, these attacks resulted in heavy Confederate casualties and failed to achieve their objectives. Lesson: aggressiveness and leadership must be tempered by a realistic assessment of the situation and the capabilities of one's forces. Hood's failure to adequately consider the strengths and weaknesses of his army led to costly mistakes. Leaders must balance boldness with prudence to achieve success. Tactical innovations and challenges. Use of defensive works. Both Union and Confederate forces made extensive use of field fortifications during the Battle of Atlanta. Trenches, earthworks, and barricades were employed to protect troops from enemy fire and to create strong defensive positions. The use of these fortifications reflected the evolving nature of warfare during the Civil War, where the increased lethality of firearms necessitated new approaches to battlefield survival. Lesson: the importance of adapting to technological advancements in warfare cannot be overstated. The use of defensive works at Atlanta highlights the need for continuous innovation in military tactics. In modern conflicts, the integration of new technologies, such as drones and cyber capabilities, requires a similar willingness to adapt and innovate. Urban combat. The Battle of Atlanta involved significant urban combat, as Union forces sought to capture the city while Confederate defenders fought to hold it. Urban combat presented unique challenges, including the difficulty of maneuvering large forces in confined spaces, the need to minimize civilian casualties, and the complexity of coordinating attacks in a built-up environment, urban warfare remains a complex and challenging aspect of modern military operations. The lessons from Atlanta underscore the importance of training and planning for urban combat scenarios. Contemporary military forces must be prepared to operate in densely populated areas, balancing the need to achieve military objectives with the imperative to protect civilian lives. Logistics and supply. Union logistics. The Union's ability to sustain its forces during the Atlanta campaign was a critical factor in its success. Sherman's army relied on a well-organized supply system, including railroads and supply depots, to maintain its offensive operations. The Union's logistical superiority allowed it to sustain prolonged campaigns deep into Confederate territory. Lesson: logistics are the lifeblood of military operations. The Union's success in Atlanta highlights the importance of a robust and efficient supply chain. Modern military operations require meticulous logistical planning to ensure that forces have the resources they need to sustain prolonged campaigns. Confederate supply challenges. The Confederacy faced significant logistical challenges during the Atlanta campaign. The Union's capture of key railroads and supply depots disrupted Confederate supply lines, making it difficult for Southern forces to receive the necessary provisions and reinforcements. These logistical difficulties contributed to the Confederate inability to hold Atlanta. Lesson: the vulnerability of supply lines can be a critical weakness in military operations. The Confederate experience in Atlanta underscores the importance of protecting and maintaining supply routes. In contemporary conflicts, securing supply lines and ensuring the resilience of logistical networks are essential for operational success. Human cost and morale. Casualties and suffering. The Battle of Atlanta resulted in significant casualties on both sides. The intense fighting and the use of entrenched positions led to high numbers of killed and wounded. The human cost of the battle was a stark reminder of the brutality of war and the sacrifices made by soldiers and civilians alike. Lesson: the human cost of war is a sobering reality that must be considered in military planning and decision-making. The high casualties at Atlanta serve as a reminder of the need to minimize loss of life and suffering in conflict. Modern military ethics emphasize the importance of proportionality and the protection of noncombatants. Impact on civilian population. The Battle of Atlanta had a profound impact on the city's civilian population. The fighting caused widespread destruction, displacing many residents and disrupting daily life. The Union's eventual capture of the city led to further hardships for the civilian population, as Sherman's forces implemented a policy of total war, targeting both military and civilian infrastructure. Lesson: the impact of war on civilian populations is a critical consideration in military operations. The experiences of Atlanta's residents highlight the need for strategies that minimize harm to noncombatants. In modern conflicts, the protection of civilians and the mitigation of collateral damage are central to ethical military conduct. Psychological warfare and morale. Sherman's psychological tactics. Sherman's use of psychological warfare was a key element of his strategy during the Atlanta campaign. By targeting not only Confederate military forces but also the Southern population's will to fight, Sherman aimed to undermine the Confederacy's ability to sustain the war effort. His famous March to the Sea after the fall of Atlanta further exemplified this approach, as Union forces sought to break the South's spirit by destroying infrastructure and resources. Lesson: psychological warfare can be a powerful tool in achieving strategic objectives. Sherman's tactics in Atlanta demonstrate the importance of targeting both the enemy's physical capabilities and their morale. In contemporary conflicts, information operations and psychological tactics are increasingly recognized as critical components of military strategy. Confederate morale. The fall of Atlanta had a devastating impact on Confederate morale. The loss of such a vital city was a significant blow to the Southern war effort, leading to increased despondency among both soldiers and civilians. The defeat at Atlanta contributed to a growing sense of hopelessness that would ultimately hasten the Confederacy's collapse. Lesson: morale is a critical factor in the success or failure of military campaigns. The Confederate experience in Atlanta underscores the importance of maintaining the morale of both military forces and the civilian population. In modern conflicts, efforts to sustain morale and resilience are essential for long-term success. Legacy and historical significance. Turning point in the Civil War. The Battle of Atlanta is widely regarded as a turning point in the Civil War. The Union victory not only boosted Northern morale but also demonstrated the effectiveness of Sherman's strategy of total war. The fall of Atlanta paved the way for Sherman's subsequent campaigns, including the March to the Sea, which further weakened the Confederacy and contributed to its eventual defeat. Lesson: the importance of decisive victories in shaping the course of a conflict cannot be overstated. The Union's success in Atlanta highlights the impact of strategic victories on the broader war effort. In contemporary conflicts, achieving decisive outcomes can be critical to achieving long-term strategic objectives. Influence on military doctrine: the lessons from the Battle of Atlanta have had a lasting impact on military doctrine. Sherman's use of maneuver warfare, psychological tactics, and total war strategies influenced subsequent military thinkers and leaders. The battle's emphasis on logistics, urban combat, and the integration of political and military objectives continues to inform modern military theory. Lesson: the study of historical battles provides valuable insights for contemporary military strategy and doctrine. The lessons from Atlanta remain relevant for understanding the complexities of modern warfare and the importance of integrating multiple dimensions of conflict. The Battle of Atlanta offers a wealth of lessons for military leaders, strategists, and historians. From the strategic importance of targeting key logistical hubs to the complexities of urban combat and the impact of psychological warfare, the battle provides a rich case study for understanding the multifaceted nature of conflict. The experiences of both Union and Confederate forces in Atlanta underscore the importance of adaptability, leadership, logistics, and morale in achieving military success. As we continue to study and learn from the Battle of Atlanta, its lessons remain relevant for addressing the challenges of contemporary and future conflicts. How Sherman's tactics in the Atlanta campaign influenced modern military strategies. The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, was a transformative period in military history, marking the transition from traditional Napoleonic tactics to modern warfare. Among the many campaigns of the war, General William Tecumseh Sherman's Atlanta campaign, May-September 1864, stands out as a pivotal moment that reshaped military strategy. Sherman's innovative approach to warfare, characterized by rapid movement, psychological warfare, and the targeting of civilian infrastructure, has had a lasting impact on military thought. This article explores how Sherman's tactics during the Atlanta campaign influenced modern military strategies, examining their historical context, execution, and enduring legacy. Historical context: the Atlanta campaign. The strategic importance of Atlanta, Georgia, was a critical hub for the Confederate war effort. As a major railroad center, industrial base, and supply depot, its capture would severely disrupt the Confederacy's ability to wage war. For the Union, taking Atlanta would not only weaken the South but also boost Northern morale, which had been flagging due to the prolonged conflict. Sherman's appointment and objectives: in March 1864, Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant was appointed General-in-Chief of the Union Army. Grant devised a grand strategy to apply pressure on multiple fronts, with Sherman tasked with leading the Western theater. Sherman's primary objective was to capture Atlanta, thereby cutting the Confederacy in two and crippling its logistical network. The opposing forces: Sherman commanded the Military Division of the Mississippi, comprising three armies: the Army of the Cumberland, Major General George H. Thomas; the Army of the Tennessee, Major General James B. McPherson; and the Army of the Ohio, Major General John M. Schofield. Facing him was General Joseph E. Johnston's Army of Tennessee, later replaced by General John Bell. Sherman's tactics in the Atlanta campaign. Maneuver warfare: Sherman's approach to the Atlanta campaign was characterized by maneuver warfare, emphasizing speed, flexibility, and the avoidance of direct confrontation when possible. This was a departure from the traditional Napoleonic tactics of massed infantry assaults and set-piece battles. Flanking movements: Sherman repeatedly outmaneuvered Johnston by executing flanking movements, forcing the Confederate general to retreat to avoid being encircled. This strategy minimized Union casualties while steadily advancing toward Atlanta. Use of terrain: Sherman's deep understanding of topography allowed him to exploit the terrain to his advantage. By using rivers, mountains, and forests as natural barriers, he could protect his flanks and supply lines while complicating Johnston's defensive efforts. Psychological warfare: Sherman recognized the importance of morale in warfare. His tactics were designed not only to defeat the Confederate Army but also to break the will of the Southern population. Total war. Sherman's concept of total war involved targeting not just military assets but also the economic and psychological foundations of the enemy's war effort. By destroying railroads, factories, and farms, he aimed to undermine the Confederacy's capacity to fight. Psychological impact. The relentless advance of Sherman's forces and the devastation left in their wake had a profound psychological impact on both Confederate soldiers and civilians. This approach foreshadowed modern psychological operations, PSYOPs, which seek to demoralize the enemy and influence public opinion. Logistics and supply. Sherman's campaign demonstrated the critical importance of logistics in modern warfare. His ability to maintain supply lines over long distances was key to his success. Railroads. Sherman's use of railroads for troop movements and supply was revolutionary. He repaired and repurposed Confederate rail lines, ensuring a steady flow of provisions and reinforcements. Foraging. When traditional supply lines were stretched thin, Sherman's troops foraged for food and supplies from the surrounding countryside. This practice, while controversial, highlighted the need for self-sufficiency in extended campaigns. Adaptability and innovation. Sherman's willingness to adapt and innovate was a hallmark of his leadership. He embraced new technologies and tactics, setting a precedent for future military leaders. Use of intelligence. Sherman placed a high value on intelligence gathering, using scouts, spies, and reconnaissance to stay informed about enemy movements. This emphasis on situational awareness is a cornerstone of modern military strategy. Combined arms. Sherman effectively integrated infantry, cavalry, and artillery, employing combined arms tactics to achieve superior firepower and mobility. This approach has become a fundamental principle of contemporary warfare. The fall of Atlanta. After months of maneuvering and several fierce battles, including the Battle of Peachtree Creek and the Battle of Atlanta, Sherman's forces finally captured the city on September 2, 1864. The fall of Atlanta was a turning point in the war, significantly boosting Northern morale and contributing to President Abraham Lincoln's re-election. Sherman's March to the Sea. Following the capture of Atlanta, Sherman embarked on his famous March to the Sea, a campaign of total war that further demonstrated his innovative tactics. By cutting a swath of destruction through Georgia, Sherman aimed to bring the war home to the Southern populace, hastening the Confederacy's collapse. Influence on modern military strategies. Doctrine of total war. Sherman's concept of total war, which targets both military and civilian infrastructure to break the enemy's will to fight, has influenced modern military doctrine. The strategic bombing campaigns of World War II, such as the Allied bombing of Germany and Japan, reflect this approach. Psychological operations, PSYOPs. Sherman's use of psychological warfare to demoralize the enemy has evolved into modern PSYOPs. Today, militaries use propaganda, misinformation, and other psychological tactics to influence enemy behavior and public opinion. Maneuver warfare. Sherman's emphasis on maneuver warfare, focusing on speed, flexibility, and outmaneuvering the enemy, has become a central tenet of modern military strategy. The U.S. Army's airland battle doctrine and the concept of shock and awe both draw on these principles. Logistics and supply chain management. Sherman's innovative approach to logistics, including the use of railroads and foraging, has informed modern supply chain management in military operations. The ability to sustain forces over long distances remains a critical factor in contemporary conflicts. Adaptability and innovation. Sherman's willingness to adapt and innovate set a precedent for future military leaders. Modern militaries prioritize research and development, embracing new technologies and tactics to maintain a strategic edge. Civil-military relations. Sherman's campaigns highlighted the importance of public support in warfare. Modern militaries recognize the need to maintain morale both on the battlefield and on the home front, influencing strategies for media relations and public affairs. Case studies. Sherman's influence in modern conflicts. World War II strategic bombing. The Allied strategic bombing campaigns in Europe and the Pacific during World War II were directly influenced by Sherman's total war tactics. By targeting industrial centers and civilian infrastructure, the Allies aimed to cripple the Axis powers' ability to wage war. Island hopping. In the Pacific theater, General Douglas MacArthur's island-hopping campaign mirrored Sherman's maneuver warfare, bypassing heavily fortified positions to capture strategic locations and cut off enemy supply lines. Vietnam War search and destroy. The U.S. military's search and destroy missions in Vietnam were reminiscent of Sherman's tactics, aiming to disrupt enemy supply lines and infrastructure. However, the lack of clear objectives and public support ultimately undermined these efforts. Psychological operations. The use of psychological operations in Vietnam, including the distribution of propaganda and the strategic Hamlet program, reflected Sherman's emphasis on breaking the enemy's will to fight. Gulf War Operation Desert Storm. The Gulf War's Operation Desert Storm showcased modern maneuver warfare, with coalition forces executing rapid flanking movements to outmaneuver Iraqi forces. The use of air power and precision strikes also echoed Sherman's combined arms approach. Shock and awe. The shock and awe strategy employed during the invasion of Iraq in 2003 aimed to overwhelm the enemy through rapid, overwhelming force, a concept rooted in Sherman's tactics. Counterinsurgency operations. Afghanistan and Iraq. In Afghanistan and Iraq, U.S. forces applied lessons from Sherman's campaigns, focusing on winning the support of the local population while targeting insurgent infrastructure. The emphasis on adaptability and innovation was crucial in these complex, asymmetric conflicts. General William Tecumseh Sherman's tactics during the Atlanta campaign marked a turning point in military history, bridging the gap between traditional and modern warfare. His emphasis on maneuver warfare, psychological operations, logistics, and adaptability has had a profound and lasting impact on military strategy. From the total war doctrines of World War II to the maneuver warfare principles of the Gulf War and the counterinsurgency strategies of Afghanistan and Iraq, Sherman's legacy endures. As military conflicts continue to evolve, the lessons of the Atlanta campaign remain relevant, underscoring the importance of innovation, flexibility, and the psychological dimensions of warfare. Sherman's vision of total war, while controversial, fundamentally reshaped the art of war and continues to influence military thought to this day. The long-term economic impacts on Atlanta after the battle. Introduction. The Battle of Atlanta, fought on July 22, 1864, was a pivotal engagement in the American Civil War. As part of the larger Atlanta campaign, the battle saw Union forces under the command of General William T. Sherman clash with Confederate troops led by General John Bell Hood. The Union victory not only marked a turning point in the war but also had profound and lasting economic impacts on the city of Atlanta. This article delves into the long-term economic consequences of the Battle of Atlanta, exploring how the city's economy was transformed in the decades following the conflict. The immediate aftermath, destruction and reconstruction. The devastation of Atlanta. The Battle of Atlanta left the city in ruins. Sherman's forces, after capturing the city, embarked on a campaign of destruction that included the burning of Atlanta's industrial and commercial infrastructure. Railroads, factories, warehouses, and homes were reduced to ashes, leaving the city's economy in shambles. The immediate aftermath of the battle was characterized by widespread poverty, displacement, and a lack of basic necessities. The Reconstruction era. The period following the Civil War, known as Reconstruction, was a time of significant economic and social upheaval in the South. Atlanta, like many other southern cities, faced the daunting task of rebuilding its economy from the ground up. The federal government played a crucial role in this process, providing aid and resources to help the city recover. However, the Reconstruction era was also marked by political instability, racial tensions, and economic uncertainty, all of which had long-term implications for Atlanta's economy. The rise of Atlanta as a commercial hub. The role of railroads. One of the most significant long-term economic impacts of the Battle of Atlanta was the city's transformation into a major commercial hub. Prior to the war, Atlanta had already established itself as an important railroad center, with several major lines converging in the city. The destruction of the city's rail infrastructure during the battle was a severe blow, but it also presented an opportunity for modernization and expansion. In the years following the war, Atlanta's railroads were rebuilt and expanded, connecting the city to markets across the country. This facilitated the movement of goods and people, making Atlanta a key transportation hub in the post-war South. The city's strategic location and improved rail infrastructure attracted businesses and investors, fueling economic growth and development. The growth of industry. The post-war period also saw the rise of industry in Atlanta. The city's industrial base, which had been largely destroyed during the battle, was rebuilt and expanded. New factories and manufacturing facilities were established, producing a wide range of goods, from textiles to machinery. The growth of industry in Atlanta was driven by several factors, including the availability of raw materials, a growing labor force, and access to transportation networks. The expansion of industry in Atlanta had a ripple effect on the city's economy, creating jobs and stimulating demand for goods and services. This, in turn, attracted more businesses and workers to the city, further fueling economic growth. By the late 19th century, Atlanta had emerged as one of the leading industrial centers in the South. The impact on agriculture, the decline of the plantation economy, the Civil War, and the Battle of Atlanta had a profound impact on the agricultural economy of the South. The plantation system, which had been the backbone of the Southern economy, was severely disrupted by the war. The abolition of slavery and the destruction of infrastructure led to a decline in agricultural production, particularly in cotton, which had been the region's primary cash crop. In the years following the war, many former plantations were broken up and sold to smaller farmers. This shift from large-scale plantation agriculture to smaller, more diversified farms had long-term implications for Atlanta's economy. While the city itself was not primarily an agricultural center, the changes in the surrounding rural areas had a significant impact on the city's economic development. The rise of diversified agriculture. The post-war period also saw a shift towards more diversified agriculture in the Atlanta region. Farmers began to grow a wider variety of crops, including fruits, vegetables, and livestock, in addition to cotton. This diversification helped to stabilize the agricultural economy and reduce the region's dependence on a single crop. The growth of diversified agriculture also had a positive impact on Atlanta's economy. The city became a center for the processing and distribution of agricultural products, with new industries emerging to support the growing agricultural sector. This, in turn, created new opportunities for trade and commerce, further boosting the city's economic growth. The role of banking and finance. The rebuilding of financial institutions. The Battle of Atlanta and the subsequent Reconstruction period had a significant impact on the city's financial institutions. Many banks and financial institutions were destroyed or severely weakened during the war, leading to a period of financial instability. However, in the years following the war, Atlanta's financial sector began to recover and expand. New banks and financial institutions were established, providing much-needed capital for the city's rebuilding efforts. The growth of the financial sector also facilitated the expansion of industry and commerce, as businesses were able to access the funds they needed to grow and innovate. By the late 19th century, Atlanta had emerged as a major financial center in the South. The impact of the New South movement. The post-war period also saw the rise of the New South movement, which sought to modernize and diversify the Southern economy. Proponents of the New South, including Atlanta's business and political leaders, advocated for the development of industry, infrastructure, and education as a means of revitalizing the region's economy. The New South movement had a significant impact on Atlanta's economy, as the city became a focal point for efforts to modernize the South. The movement attracted investment and talent to the city, fueling economic growth and development. Atlanta's leaders also played a key role in promoting the city as a center of commerce and industry, helping to establish its reputation as the capital of the New South. The impact on labor and employment. The shift from slave to free labor. One of the most significant long-term economic impacts of the Battle of Atlanta was the shift from slave labor to free labor. The abolition of slavery fundamentally changed the labor market in the South, leading to the emergence of new labor systems and employment practices. In the years following the war, many former slaves migrated to cities like Atlanta in search of work. This influx of labor helped to fuel the city's economic growth, as businesses were able to tap into a larger and more diverse labor pool. However, the transition to free labor was not without challenges, as many former slaves faced discrimination and limited opportunities for economic advancement. The rise of wage labor. The post-war period also saw the rise of wage labor in Atlanta. As the city's economy grew and diversified, new industries and businesses emerged, creating demand for skilled and unskilled workers. The growth of wage labor helped to stimulate economic growth, as workers had more disposable income to spend on goods and services. However, the rise of wage labor also led to the emergence of labor unions and worker organizations, as workers sought to improve their wages and working conditions. This, in turn, led to increased labor activism and strikes, which had both positive and negative impacts on the city's economy. The impact on education and human capital. The establishment of educational institutions. The post-war period also saw significant developments in education in Atlanta. The establishment of new educational institutions, including schools, colleges, and universities, played a crucial role in the city's economic development. Education was seen as a key driver of economic growth, as it provided the skills and knowledge needed for the workforce. One of the most significant developments in education in Atlanta was the establishment of historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs. These institutions played a crucial role in providing education and training for African Americans, who had been largely excluded from the educational system prior to the war. The growth of HBCUs in Atlanta helped to create a more educated and skilled workforce, which in turn contributed to the city's economic growth. The impact on human capital. The growth of education in Atlanta also had a significant impact on the city's human capital. As more people gained access to education and training, the city's workforce became more skilled and productive. This, in turn, attracted businesses and investors to the city, as they sought to tap into the growing pool of skilled labor. The development of human capital in Atlanta also had a positive impact on the city's economy by fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. Educated individuals were more likely to start their own businesses and develop new products and services, contributing to the city's economic growth and development. The impact on infrastructure and urban development. The rebuilding of infrastructure. The Battle of Atlanta left the city's infrastructure in ruins, but the post-war period saw significant efforts to rebuild and modernize the city's infrastructure. The reconstruction of roads, bridges, and public buildings was a key priority, as it was essential for the city's economic recovery. The rebuilding of infrastructure in Atlanta was facilitated by federal and state funding, as well as private investment. The city's leaders also played a key role in promoting infrastructure development, recognizing its importance for economic growth. By the late 19th century, Atlanta had emerged as a modern city with a well-developed infrastructure, which helped to attract businesses and residents. The growth of urban development. The post-war period also saw significant growth in urban development in Atlanta. As the city's economy grew, so too did its population, leading to increased demand for housing, commercial space, and public services. This, in turn, led to the expansion of the city's urban areas, as new neighborhoods and business districts were developed. The growth of urban development in Atlanta was also driven by the city's strategic location and transportation networks. The city's railroads and highways made it an attractive location for businesses and residents, leading to further economic growth and development. By the early 20th century, Atlanta had emerged as a major urban center in the South, with a thriving economy and a growing population. The impact on race relations and social equity. The legacy of slavery and segregation. The Battle of Atlanta and the subsequent Reconstruction period had a profound impact on race relations in the city. The abolition of slavery marked the end of one form of racial oppression, but it was soon replaced by new forms of discrimination and segregation. The post-war period saw the rise of Jim Crow laws, which enforced racial segregation and limited the economic opportunities available to African Americans. The legacy of slavery and segregation had long-term implications for Atlanta's economy, as it created significant disparities in wealth and opportunity between white and black residents. African Americans in Atlanta faced significant barriers to economic advancement, including limited access to education, employment, and housing. These disparities persisted for decades, shaping the city's economic and social landscape. The civil rights movement and economic change. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s had a significant impact on Atlanta's economy. The movement sought to end racial segregation and discrimination, and it achieved significant victories in the form of civil rights legislation and court rulings. These changes had a profound impact on Atlanta's economy, as they opened up new opportunities for African Americans in education, employment, and business. The civil rights movement also helped to change the city's image, as Atlanta emerged as a center of the movement and a symbol of progress in the South. This, in turn, attracted businesses and investors to the city, contributing to its economic growth. By the late 20th century, Atlanta had emerged as a major economic and cultural center in the South, With a diverse and dynamic economy, the impact on business and entrepreneurship. The rise of Black-owned businesses. The post-war period also saw the rise of Black-owned businesses in Atlanta. Despite the challenges of segregation and discrimination, African Americans in the city were able to establish successful businesses in a variety of industries, including retail, hospitality, and professional services. These businesses played a crucial role in the city's economy, providing jobs and services to the African American community. The growth of Black-owned businesses in Atlanta was facilitated by the city's vibrant African American community, which provided a strong customer base and support network. The success of these businesses also helped to challenge racial stereotypes and promote economic empowerment within the African American community. The impact of entrepreneurship. The post-war period also saw a rise in entrepreneurship in Atlanta, as individuals sought to take advantage of the city's growing economy and opportunities. Entrepreneurs in the city established new businesses in a wide range of industries, from manufacturing to technology. This spirit of entrepreneurship helped to drive economic growth and innovation in the city, contributing to its reputation as a center of commerce and industry. The rise of entrepreneurship in Atlanta was also facilitated by the city's supportive business environment, which included access to capital, a skilled workforce, and a strong infrastructure. By the late 20th century, Atlanta had emerged as a major hub for entrepreneurship and innovation, with a thriving startup ecosystem and a diverse range of businesses. The impact on technology and innovation. The growth of the technology sector. The post-war period also saw significant growth in the technology sector in Atlanta. The city's strategic location, skilled workforce, and supportive business environment made it an attractive location for technology companies. Over time, Atlanta emerged as a major center for technology and innovation, with a thriving tech industry and a strong ecosystem of startups and established companies. The growth of the technology sector in Atlanta had a significant impact on the city's economy, creating high-paying jobs and driving innovation. The sector also attracted investment and talent to the city, further fueling economic growth. By the early 21st century, Atlanta had established itself as a major player in the global technology industry, with a reputation for innovation and entrepreneurship. The impact of innovation on the economy. The rise of technology and innovation in Atlanta also had a broader impact on the city's economy. The growth of the tech sector helped to diversify the city's economy, reducing its dependence on traditional industries like manufacturing and agriculture. This diversification made the city's economy more resilient and adaptable, allowing it to weather economic downturns and capitalize on new opportunities. The impact of innovation on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain talent. The city's reputation as a center of innovation and entrepreneurship made it an attractive destination for skilled workers, who were drawn to the opportunities and quality of life that the city offered. This, in turn, helped to fuel further economic growth and development. The impact on real estate and housing. The growth of the real estate market. The post-war period also saw significant growth in the real estate market in Atlanta. As the city's economy grew and its population expanded, demand for housing and commercial space increased. This, in turn, led to the development of new neighborhoods, business districts, and infrastructure. The growth of the real estate market in Atlanta was driven by several factors, including the city's strategic location, transportation networks, and supportive business environment. The city's leaders also played a key role in promoting real estate development, recognizing its importance for economic growth. By the late 20th century, Atlanta had emerged as a major real estate market, with a thriving housing market and a diverse range of commercial properties. The impact on housing affordability. The growth of the real estate market in Atlanta also had an impact on housing affordability. As demand for housing increased, so too did housing prices, leading to concerns about affordability and access to housing. This, in turn, led to the development of new policies and programs aimed at promoting affordable housing and addressing the needs of low-income residents. The impact of housing affordability on Atlanta's economy was significant, as it affected the city's ability to attract and retain workers. Affordable housing was seen as a key factor in maintaining a stable and productive workforce, and efforts to address housing affordability were seen as essential for the city's long-term economic growth. The impact on transportation and mobility. The development of transportation networks. The post-war period also saw significant developments in transportation and mobility in Atlanta. The city's strategic location and transportation networks made it an important hub for the movement of goods and people. Over time, Atlanta emerged as a major transportation center, with a well-developed network of highways, railroads, and airports. The development of transportation networks in Atlanta had a significant impact on the city's economy, as it facilitated the movement of goods and people and supported the growth of industry and commerce. The city's transportation networks also played a key role in attracting businesses and investors, who were drawn to the city's accessibility and connectivity. The impact of transportation on economic growth. The impact of transportation on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain businesses. The city's transportation networks made it an attractive location for companies that relied on the movement of goods and people, such as logistics and distribution companies. This, in turn, helped to fuel economic growth and development in the city. The impact of transportation on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain talent. The city's transportation networks made it an attractive destination for workers, who were drawn to the city's accessibility and quality of life. This, in turn, helped to fuel further economic growth and development. The impact on tourism and hospitality. The growth of the tourism industry. The post-war period also saw significant growth in the tourism and hospitality industry in Atlanta. The city's rich history, cultural attractions, and vibrant economy made it an attractive destination for tourists and visitors. Over time, Atlanta emerged as a major tourism center, with a thriving hospitality industry and a diverse range of attractions. The growth of the tourism industry in Atlanta had a significant impact on the city's economy, creating jobs and generating revenue. The industry also played a key role in promoting the city's image and attracting visitors from around the world. By the late 20th century, Atlanta had established itself as a major tourism destination, with a reputation for hospitality and cultural attractions. The impact of tourism on economic growth. The impact of tourism on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain businesses. The city's tourism industry made it an attractive location for companies that relied on the movement of people, such as hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues. This, in turn, helped to fuel economic growth and development in the city. The impact of tourism on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain talent. The city's tourism industry made it an attractive destination for workers, who were drawn to the city's vibrant economy and quality of life. This, in turn, helped to fuel further economic growth and development. The impact on healthcare and biotechnology. The growth of the healthcare sector. The post-war period also saw significant growth in the healthcare sector in Atlanta. The city's strategic location, skilled workforce, and supportive business environment made it an attractive location for healthcare companies. Over time, Atlanta emerged as a major center for healthcare and biotechnology, with a thriving healthcare industry and a strong ecosystem of hospitals, research institutions, and biotech companies. The growth of the healthcare sector in Atlanta had a significant impact on the city's economy, creating high-paying jobs and driving innovation. The sector also attracted investment and talent to the city, further fueling economic growth. By the early 21st century, Atlanta had established itself as a major player in the global healthcare and biotechnology industry, with a reputation for innovation and excellence. The impact of healthcare on economic growth. The impact of healthcare on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain businesses. The city's healthcare sector made it an attractive location for companies that relied on the movement of people and goods, such as pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers. This, in turn, helped to fuel economic growth and development in the city. The impact of healthcare on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain talent. The city's healthcare sector made it an attractive destination for workers, who were drawn to the city's vibrant economy and quality of life. This, in turn, helped to fuel further economic growth and development. The impact on education and research. The growth of educational institutions. The post-war period also saw significant growth in educational institutions in Atlanta. The city's strategic location, skilled workforce, and supportive business environment made it an attractive location for colleges and universities. Over time, Atlanta emerged as a major center for education and research, with a thriving academic community and a strong ecosystem of colleges, universities, and research institutions. The growth of educational institutions in Atlanta had a significant impact on the city's economy, creating high-paying jobs and driving innovation. The sector also attracted investment and talent to the city, further fueling economic growth. By the early 21st century, Atlanta had established itself as a major player in the global education and research industry, with a reputation for excellence and innovation. The impact of education on economic growth. The impact of education on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain businesses. The city's educational institutions made it an attractive location for companies that relied on the movement of people and goods, such as technology companies and research institutions. This, in turn, helped to fuel economic growth and development in the city. The impact of education on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain talent. The city's educational institutions made it an attractive destination for workers, who were drawn to the city's vibrant economy and quality of life. This, in turn, helped to fuel further economic growth and development. The impact on arts and culture. The growth of the arts and culture sector. The post-war period also saw significant growth in the arts and culture sector in Atlanta. The city's rich history, cultural attractions, and vibrant economy made it an attractive destination for artists and cultural institutions. Over time, Atlanta emerged as a major center for arts and culture, with a thriving arts community and a diverse range of cultural attractions. The growth of the arts and culture sector in Atlanta had a significant impact on the city's economy, creating jobs and generating revenue. The sector also played a key role in promoting the city's image and attracting visitors from around the world. By the late 20th century, Atlanta had established itself as a major cultural destination, with a reputation for creativity and innovation. The impact of arts and culture on economic growth. The impact of arts and culture on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain businesses. The city's arts and culture sector made it an attractive location for companies that relied on the movement of people and goods, such as entertainment companies and cultural institutions. This, in turn, helped to fuel economic growth and development in the city. The impact of arts and culture on Atlanta's economy was also evident in the city's ability to attract and retain talent. The city's arts and culture sector made it an attractive destination for workers, who were drawn to the city's vibrant economy and quality of life. This, in turn, helped to fuel further economic growth and development. The Battle of Atlanta had profound and lasting economic impacts on the city, shaping its development in the decades following the Civil War. From the destruction and reconstruction of the post-war period to the rise of Atlanta as a major commercial, industrial, and cultural hub, the city's economy underwent significant transformation. The growth of industries such as transportation, technology, healthcare, and education, along with the rise of entrepreneurship and innovation, helped to establish Atlanta as a major economic center in the South. The city's ability to adapt and thrive in the face of challenges, including the legacy of slavery and segregation, the impact of the civil rights movement, and the rise of new industries, is a testament to its resilience and dynamism. Today, Atlanta stands as a vibrant and diverse city, with a thriving economy and a rich cultural heritage, shaped in no small part by the long-term economic impacts of the Battle of Atlanta. The fall of Atlanta and its impact on the morale of the Confederate Army. The American Civil War, fought between 1861 and 1865, was a defining moment in the history of the United States. It was a conflict that pitted the northern states, known as the Union, against the southern states, known as the Confederacy. The war was fought over a variety of issues, including states' rights, economic differences, and, most notably, the institution of slavery. Among the many pivotal moments in the Civil War, the fall of Atlanta in September 1864 stands out as a critical event that had profound implications for both the Union and the Confederacy. This article will explore how the fall of Atlanta affected the morale of the Confederate Army, examining the strategic, psychological, and political dimensions of this significant event. The strategic importance of Atlanta. Atlanta as a Confederate stronghold. Atlanta, Georgia, was one of the most important cities in the Confederacy. Located in the heart of the South, it served as a major transportation hub, connecting various parts of the Confederacy through railroads. The city was also an industrial center, producing munitions, textiles, and other supplies essential for the Confederate war effort. As such, Atlanta was not just a symbol of Southern resilience but also a critical logistical and economic asset. The Union's campaign to capture Atlanta was part of a broader strategy known as the Anaconda Plan, which aimed to strangle the Confederacy by cutting off its supply lines and isolating its armies. The campaign was led by Major General William Tecumseh Sherman, who understood the importance of Atlanta to the Confederate war effort. Sherman's forces began their advance toward Atlanta in the spring of 1864, engaging in a series of battles and skirmishes that gradually pushed the Confederate Army, led by General Joseph E. Johnston, back toward the city. The Siege of Atlanta. By July 1864, Sherman's forces had reached the outskirts of Atlanta, and the city was under siege. The Confederate Army, now under the command of General John Bell Hood after Johnston's removal, attempted to defend the city but was ultimately unable to withstand the Union's relentless assault. On September 1, 1864, Hood ordered the evacuation of Atlanta, and the city fell to Union forces the following day. The immediate impact on Confederate morale: shock and disbelief. The fall of Atlanta came as a shock to many in the Confederacy. Despite the Union's advances, there was a widespread belief that Atlanta could hold out indefinitely. The city's fall shattered this illusion and led to a sense of disbelief among Confederate soldiers and civilians alike. For many, the loss of Atlanta was a clear indication that the Confederacy was on the brink of collapse. The psychological blow. The psychological impact of Atlanta's fall cannot be overstated. For Confederate soldiers, Atlanta had been a symbol of Southern resistance and a beacon of hope. Its loss dealt a severe blow to their morale, leading to feelings of despair and hopelessness. Many soldiers began to question whether the Confederate cause was still worth fighting for, and desertions increased in the aftermath of the city's fall. The impact on Confederate leadership. The fall of Atlanta also had a significant impact on Confederate leadership. General Hood, who had taken command of the Army of Tennessee just weeks before the city's fall, faced intense criticism for his handling of the defense. His decision to abandon Atlanta without a more determined fight was seen by many as a sign of weakness, further eroding confidence in the Confederate high command. The political fallout. The effect on Confederate politics. The fall of Atlanta had far-reaching political implications for the Confederacy. President Jefferson Davis and his administration faced mounting criticism for their handling of the war, and the loss of Atlanta only added to their woes. The Confederate Congress, already divided over issues such as conscription and taxation, became even more fractious in the wake of the city's fall. The impact on Southern public opinion. Public opinion in the South was deeply affected by the fall of Atlanta. The city's loss was a stark reminder of the Union's growing strength and the Confederacy's dwindling resources. Many Southerners began to lose faith in the Confederate government's ability to win the war, and support for the war effort waned. This shift in public opinion had a direct impact on the morale of Confederate soldiers, who were increasingly aware of the growing disillusionment on the home front. The role of the press. The Confederate press played a significant role in shaping public opinion in the aftermath of Atlanta's fall. While some newspapers attempted to downplay the significance of the loss, others were more critical, openly questioning the competence of Confederate leadership. This media coverage further contributed to the erosion of morale among both soldiers and civilians. The military consequences. The loss of a strategic asset. The fall of Atlanta was a significant military setback for the Confederacy. The city's railroads, factories, and warehouses were now in Union hands, depriving the Confederate Army of much-needed supplies and resources. This loss had a direct impact on the Confederate Army's ability to wage war, further undermining morale. The effect on Confederate strategy. The fall of Atlanta forced the Confederate high command to rethink its strategy. With the loss of such a critical city, the Confederacy was forced to adopt a more defensive posture, focusing on protecting what remained of its territory rather than launching offensives. This shift in strategy was demoralizing for Confederate soldiers, who had been fighting for the hope of eventual victory. The impact on Confederate recruitment. The fall of Atlanta also had a negative impact on Confederate recruitment efforts. With the loss of such a key city, many Southerners were less willing to enlist in the Confederate Army. This decline in recruitment further weakened the Confederate war effort and contributed to the overall decline in morale. The long-term effects on Confederate morale. The erosion of confidence. The fall of Atlanta marked a turning point in the Civil War, and its impact on Confederate morale was long-lasting. The loss of such a critical city eroded confidence in the Confederate cause, both among soldiers and civilians. Many began to question whether the Confederacy could still achieve its goals, and this doubt only grew as the war dragged on. The impact on desertion rates. One of the most significant long-term effects of Atlanta's fall was the increase in desertion rates among Confederate soldiers. As morale declined, more and more soldiers chose to abandon their posts, further weakening the Confederate Army. This trend continued in the months following the fall of Atlanta, contributing to the eventual collapse of the Confederacy. The psychological toll of Atlanta's fall cannot be overstated. For many Confederate soldiers, the loss of the city was a crushing blow that left them demoralized and disheartened. This psychological impact had a lasting effect on the Confederate Army, contributing to its eventual defeat. The Union perspective. The boost to Union morale. While the fall of Atlanta was a devastating blow to the Confederacy, it had the opposite effect on Union morale. The capture of such a key city was a significant victory for the Union, boosting the spirits of both soldiers and civilians. This boost in morale was a critical factor in the Union's eventual victory in the Civil War. The impact on Union strategy. The fall of Atlanta also had a significant impact on Union strategy. With the city in Union hands, General Sherman was able to launch his famous March to the Sea, a campaign that further weakened the Confederacy and contributed to its eventual collapse. This shift in strategy was made possible by the fall of Atlanta, highlighting the city's importance to the Union war effort. The political implications for the Union. The fall of Atlanta also had important political implications for the Union. The victory came at a critical time, just weeks before the 1864 presidential election. The capture of Atlanta helped to bolster support for President Abraham Lincoln and his administration, contributing to his re-election and the continuation of the Union war effort. The aftermath of Atlanta's fall. The destruction of Atlanta. In the aftermath of Atlanta's fall, General Sherman ordered the destruction of much of the city's infrastructure. This act of total war was intended to further weaken the Confederacy and demoralize its population. The destruction of Atlanta was a stark reminder of the Union's growing strength and the Confederacy's inability to protect its cities. The impact on Southern civilians. The fall of Atlanta had a profound impact on Southern civilians. The destruction of the city left many homeless and destitute, further eroding support for the Confederate cause. The loss of Atlanta also served as a wake-up call for many Southerners, who began to realize that the Confederacy was on the brink of defeat. The legacy of Atlanta's fall. The fall of Atlanta left a lasting legacy on both the Union and the Confederacy. For the Union, it was a symbol of their growing strength and determination to win the war. For the Confederacy, it was a stark reminder of their dwindling resources and the futility of their cause. The fall of Atlanta marked a turning point in the Civil War, and its impact on Confederate morale was a critical factor in the eventual Union victory. The fall of Atlanta was a pivotal moment in the American Civil War, with far-reaching implications for both the Union and the Confederacy. For the Confederacy, the loss of such a critical city was a devastating blow that had a profound impact on the morale of its army. The fall of Atlanta shattered the illusion of Southern invincibility, leading to feelings of despair and hopelessness among Confederate soldiers and civilians alike. The loss of Atlanta also had significant political and military consequences, further weakening the Confederate war effort and contributing to its eventual collapse. In contrast, the fall of Atlanta was a major victory for the Union, boosting morale and providing a critical boost to President Lincoln's re-election campaign. The capture of Atlanta allowed General Sherman to launch his March to the Sea, a campaign that further weakened the Confederacy and paved the way for the Union's eventual victory. In the end, the fall of Atlanta was a turning point in the Civil War, marking the beginning of the end for the Confederacy. Its impact on Confederate morale was a critical factor in the eventual Union victory, and its legacy continues to be felt to this day. The fall of Atlanta serves as a reminder of the importance of morale in warfare and the profound impact that a single event can have on the course of history.